we've got 4 presenters in this session. Thanks, get the list here. And then the way we'll do it is each presentation will be for about 13 minutes. I know presenters were planning on being able to present for 15 minutes, so if you go 15, that just means we have time for questions with the idea that we're going to shoot, target that we're going to shoot for is 13 minutes for a presentation, 2 minutes for questions. So maybe what we can do to keep things going is when one presenter is finished presenter, the next presenter can come up and make their presentation ready. Okay, so and then while the previous presenter is answering questions, the next presenter will come up with their presentation ready. Also for the presenters, then what I'm going to do is at about 12 minutes, I'm just going to stand up. And that means I'm going to wrap it up in a minute or two if you can. Okay? Because lunch is next, you know, depends on how bad you guys want to get out at noon and eat, right? So our first presenter is Laura Harris, and she's with the Pavlis.
Okay, so good morning, guys. Like Brooke said, I'm Laura Harris. I'm a fourth year environmental engineering student at Tech, and I'm part of the Pavlis Institute. So this is the team I traveled with this summer to Ghana. Eric, Leah, and Andy. So Eric and Leah are biomedical engineers, and Andy is a pre-med student. Okay, so in case you're not familiar with the Pavlis Institute, it's a certificate program at Tech that you apply for like when you're applying to get in your senior year of high school. It's a lot of leadership classes and focused on being globally conscious and having a good cultural understanding. It was established in 2005, so cohorts have been traveling to Ghana for a few years now, and they stay for 5 weeks and develop projects while they're there. So the big thing is the international experience, especially between your junior and senior year. So you have classes leading up to that develop communication and leadership skills. And then the summer right before, you kind of have a crash course in the culture and the language where you're traveling to. So Ghana is an English-speaking country, but we learned a little bit of the local dialect tree, which is kind of helpful in some of the rural areas where they speak very good English. And yeah, so this is where we traveled around in Ghana. So it's up here in the western part if you're unfamiliar with it. We got to see a lot of the country. So we flew into Accra, which is the capital, and then drove up to Kumasi, where our Ghanaian advisor is from. We actually stayed in Sunyani with the university in the dorm there, and then we got traveled outside to some different villages and then up to a national park in the north. Okay, so our big project this year was the mobile health clinic. Students usually do projects that are kind of tailored toward their majors and disciplines, so traveling with 2 biomedical engineers and a pre-med student are just kind of medical related. So the mobile health clinic was a collaboration with the IBB department. Eric and Leanne were part of that, and they worked for like about a year leading up to our travel. So they got a tech van donated there, a big passenger van, and they gutted it out and essentially a clinic inside. There's like shelving units and a sink system, all sorts of stuff. So the van got shipped about 2 months before we were expected in country, and that was kind of worrisome because we've heard horror stories about things getting held up in customs and stuff, so that was nerve-wracking. But was able to get through in time. So this is a picture of inside the van with some of the community nurses, and then up top was a typical staff we went out with. Usually there was a doctor and like 4 nurses, some who do kind of like the insurance and the paperwork part of it, and dispensaries like the pharmacy guy. So more on the clinic, so like the logistics of it. It was donated to the regional hospital. So Ghana's broken up into different regions, and then within those regions there's different districts. So we stayed in Sunyani Municipal there, that's the capital of the region. And what happened with the clinic, the mobile clinic, was the different district clinics would get to use the van if they had need for rural areas that needed healthcare that didn't have it readily available. So we got to go to the Time district up there and also to Dorma. So we'd go and work with the staff there at the local clinic, and they would kind of reach out to the periphery and we'd go to the different villages and help people who didn't have readily available health service. Okay, so this is what was actually stocked inside the van: a refrigerator, microscopes, and on and on you can read. So what we found out was kind of interesting, though. We spent a lot of time working up these donations and gifts from hospitals, but the doctors themselves ended up kind of shying away from the more advanced medical devices because they weren't used to using that in their daily practice. So in future, I think it'd be better if we kept things simple and maybe just do like some vital instruments or rapid diagnostic tests and things like that. What else was really good though was the ultrasound. They did use that one for a lot because there's a lot of pregnant women that were being seen in those villages, and that helped doctors screen for potential problems. Okay, so this is kind of a typical setup, what it looked like. We go to these villages. We didn't realize it'd all be outside. They really only use the van for like privacy purposes. So like that's where the ultrasound screenings were done. And then they would just set up different tables around the van. So everyone would, like the villagers would just bring chairs and tables in and then set up. So like here is like where the insurance was being done. Then they had like nurses taking vitals, and they had 2 nurses doing that. And then after they got their vitals taken, they'd go see the doctor who was inside the awning there in the van. And we'd see probably like 85 patients a day. We did that for 2 weeks for the 2 different clinics. And yeah, so it was a lot of people at a fast pace. Okay, so one of the doctors wrote this up for us, which was really nice, the ailments he diagnosed and the frequency of them. So as you can see, malaria is the biggest ailment that was diagnosed, and we kind of soon learned that was just part of daily life in Ghana. I didn't really meet a man who hadn't had malaria before, but getting it treated right away is key because then they can help run through the treatment and that the symptoms aren't severe. So it's really great to be able to screen that earlier versus waiting until they're very sick when they have to make it into the hospital. Okay, so the second biggest one was myalgia. A lot of the villages we were seeing had big farming communities, so they often complained of aches and pains from over intensive work. Up there is Leah working with one of the midwives and seeing a pregnant lady. And then down here is a little girl who had a really bad infection on her face, and she had malaria. And it was kind of amazing to see her getting that help right away versus having to wait a few weeks like she might have had to in order to get transportation to the clinic. So that was really a case that really hit home how much the clinic was helping. Okay, so Lister Engine was another project. This was brought over by a previous cohort. Pavlis really likes to focus on the sustainability of their projects, so we do maintenance on previous cohorts projects while we're over there as well. So that's Eric helping them get the engine working again, like the belt slipped or something. I don't really know. But that provides electricity to the nearby clinic. So while he was doing that, we were kind of on the side there, and a little cocoa farmer man came up to us and asked if we'd like to tour his farm, which was right behind the clinic. So Leah, Andy, and I ended up walking through his cocoa farm and kind of learning the process of cocoa production and things like that, and tasting some of the fruits. So we didn't really help too much with the Lister Engine, but we could be cocoa farmers now. Another thing we did was an elementary day camp. So historically, Pavlis students like to work with the local schools and community centers and kind of teach science lessons or like mind tracker demonstrations. But we kind of want to do something a bit different this year, so we did some sanitation, hand washing demonstrations, and we also kind of did some creative thinking and leadership building activities, which it's kind of a challenge at first, not only because the language barrier or accent was kind of hard for them to understand sometimes, but these were also just new concepts, because the Ghanaian curriculum is very much like read this and just regurgitate it. So the idea of like creative thinking or coming up with new innovative ideas was kind of strange to them. So we had the paper airplane contest where we kind of told them the basics of paper airplanes, so it would make them fly well and things, and kind of let them have free reign to design their own. And we had a little competition, and then we did some like team building exercises like the human knot, those different kind of day camp leadership things we did growing up. So that went pretty well. And then different cultural experiences. So we had a lot of projects, but we got to see a lot of the country as well. So there's things like 4-hour church services that we got to experience, or traditional dancing. We also got to tour a kente cloth weaving place. So all these are hand woven, and I learned that each have different names for different pattern done. So it was really beautiful to see that in action. Also, so let's see here, food was one of our bigger challenges because we had to cook for ourselves in the dorm on hot plates, and going to the market was overwhelming for those first few weeks because it wasn't just like a one-stop shop. We had to go all over the town square and jump over taxis and avoid everything and find the food you needed. And everything looked different to us too because we weren't used to seeing, mangoes are just like the eggs by themselves. Having that crate was a godsend because for the first few times I'm just having like these eggs in my hand trying to get back to the dorm, weaving through traffic and stuff. So yeah, the first 2 weeks were kind of rough getting adjusted to the market and everything, but then we started meeting friends in our dorms too that could kind of teach us and help us make some Ghanaian dishes like red bread and fried plantains. And then we also got some dresses made with some of the local fabric, and that was fun too. Okay, so another thing we got to go to is waterfalls in Temple. That was our way up north to the national park. So that was a really beautiful spot. We got to play around in the water. Okay, so Mole National Park was probably the biggest like African thing we did. We got to see elephants and kind of go on a little safari, but it was interesting being in the village afterwards because the children were very different than the ones we had seen. They were used to seeing Westerns all the time, so they were like asking for things or sticking their hands in their pockets. It was just a really different feel. So it made me realize how grateful I was to see real Ghana working on those projects and being part of people's daily lives so I could see the real park versus just what I might have seen just being a tourist. So it really made me grateful for the experiences we've been having. So I'm gonna say thank you, and I can answer any questions you guys have.
I guess for the Lister engine that was powering the whole clinic, how long was the engine down before you guys were able to complete repairs? And did you also train someone there to make sure that in the future they would be able to at least fix some of the basics themselves?
Right, so they wanted to have, it happened kind of recently, and what we also found out was they only powered, the engine's powered off of diesel, and when their crops come in is the only time of the year they can actually buy the diesel to run the machine. So it's only being run for a small portion of the year, so they had just fired it up and kind of realized that the belt was slipping. They had a technician there as well, but he was unfamiliar with that kind of engine, so Eric was able to help him out a little bit more. But that is definitely a future project consideration. We're trying to get to where we run off of palm oil, which is very predominant in that area, so it's definitely something to think about though for us.